There was a huge plunge on Wall Street on Monday, caused by nervousness. Stocks in Japan, Australia, South Korea, and China all fell, tracking losses in the US. However, Europe seems to be more resilient and is trading basically flat at the moment. Wall Street suffered hefty falls on Monday, as concerns over the economic impact of President Trump's trade policies sparked a sell-off. Here's the numbers at the US close, and also, let's just very quickly take a look at the S&P 500. Now, this tracks the biggest American companies, and it fell by 2%. The Dow Jones slipped by just over 2%, and the tech-heavy Nasdaq plunged by 4%. Aaron Delmore was watching all of that action from New York for us. You could say there's no place to hide on Wall Street. Stocks from apparel to airlines and even the big tech darlings took a dive during Monday's trading. All three major U.S. indexes suffered, with the Dow losing more than 800 points, the S&P hitting a 6-month low, and the tech-heavy Nasdaq down 4%. Investors are rattled by a Sunday Fox News interview in which President Trump refused to rule out the possibility of the U.S. entering a recession. He said instead that the economy was going through a period of transition. "What we're doing is very big. We're bringing wealth back to America. That's a big thing, and there are always periods. It takes a little time," he said. Investors are concerned that tariffs will lead to higher prices for consumers and complicate efforts by Federal Reserve officials to bring down inflation and cut borrowing costs. Even the tech stocks that fueled optimism and powered the stock market to new highs last year took a beating. Elon Musk's Tesla suffered a 15% decline, and tech darling Nvidia fell 5%. Alphabet and Meta fell more than 4% on the day. Aaron Delmore joined now by Kathleen Brooks, the research director at XTV. Kathleen, it's lovely to have you with us here on the program. Mr. Trump is saying that he doesn't look at the markets. Should he? He might be looking at them a little bit closely today after yesterday's price action. In fact, he's got a business roundtable later today, so he's going to meet with some of the top CEOs from U.S. companies. And we think that's because they've asked for a meeting to discuss what's going on with stock markets, the fact that we've got this U.S. underperformance, and big recession risks. Now, it will be really interesting to see the outcome of that meeting. I think, to stabilize markets and to see some sort of turnaround. We're going to need to see President Trump roll back on some of his tariff plans and maybe even support equity markets, two things we don't actually think he's going to do. So, there could be more downside to come, especially if this meeting doesn't lead to any outcomes today. It's interesting you say that there could be a lot more turmoil on the cards because we're yet to get to April. April the 2nd, of course, is when the full suite of tariffs are imposed. I'm just wondering, a lot of White House officials have come out and said, calm down. This is all emotional. We're looking at the fundamentals. When we look at the macroeconomic side of this, which is what Mr. Trump is pointing to, do those policies make sense for businesses, customers, and Americans right now? The fear is that America is trying to go it alone in a very globalized world. Supply chains are very global. America stands alone, of course, but its economy is very reliant on the global economy, on US, but also on the global economy remaining strong. And that's a two-way relationship. We rely on that as well. The fact that tariffs could disrupt that, at the same time as there were signs that the US economy was weakening naturally, is really fueling recession fears in the US. There's also higher inflation that can come from tariffs. So right now, the worries in the markets are not necessarily showing through in the economic data, but the fear is that it will do so in the future, and that's why markets are falling right now. Also, he's trying to do a lot of things at once, broad-based tariff policies and cutting the size of government when government has been a big consumer of its own in the US economy over recent years. Those two things together, he may have gone too far too fast at the beginning. So when Trump won the election, it was all about the positive impact he could have on the economy. Now, it's really soured, and it's about how negative some of his policies could be.